Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is American Truck Simulator. Let's rant with Scrapper. We're playing American Truck Simulator, and I've started a new career with hopefully, I didn't actually notice on the last job, and it may not have worked because it was a tutorial, but hopefully the um, the new mod that I have, which do I have it here? No. Hopefully the new mod I have is working. It's supposed to have real world companies. So I'll explain what we're doing here. We're trying to take our first regular job. There are a series of different jobs that you can do. The bottom ones are irrelevant to us. This is from World of Trucks, which I'm not a part of, where you can get jobs from other people who are logged into World of Trucks. I don't do that. Convoys are where you're delivering with friends. We're not going to do that. So there are three other types of markets. Quick jobs is where you do a job for a company and they give you the truck and the trailer and you just hop into the trailer and do it. The freight market is where you have your own truck. You go pick up one of their trailers from one place and deliver it someplace else. The cargo market is where you have your own truck and trailer and you bring the proper trailer, the proper type of trailer, to the place where you need it to use it, like a big giant tanker truck for delivering, gasoline or something. And the company then just fills up your trailer. You can make the most money doing that because you have your own trailer and so you can command a higher fee. But for now, all we can do is the quick jobs because we don't have the money to buy a truck. We only have a few bucks. So let's go ahead and pick a quick job. And what we're going to do is we're in Oklahoma City. So let's start there. We can really start anywhere, but we'll start in Oklahoma City. Why is this caps locked? And we're going to go to Dallas. It's not a huge trip, but it gives us 4,000 miles, and it'll allow us to discover some new cities. And then from Dallas, we can take another job. So we're going to go ahead and take that job. And when it's this kind of a quick job, you just start in the actual location where the job is. And right now, we can't take really long jobs because, as I explained in the first episode, you have to spend experience points on skills. And one of the skills you can have is the skill of having longer trips. So let's take a look here. What's the company? Is this a real world company we're at? Nope, it didn't work. This is the home store. It should be Home Depot, I think. All right, well, I guess that mod didn't work. So we're going to head out. And I guess we need to... we're going to need to go this way. So as we go, what I wanted to rant about today... hang on, let me just make sure I don't hit anything as we go. Yeah, sometimes this does require a little bit of attention. So let's get out of the home store here, and then we will go ahead with our rant. Now it looks like there's no way out, but this gate should automatically open for us as soon as we approach it. Try to turn wide enough not to hit anything. You want to, at least my experience with this is you want to almost clip the gate on this side so that you can turn wide enough to get out. And this isn't a very big load. If you have a really long load, it's even worse. Okay, so it looks like nobody's coming there. And then we can go out here. Okay, guys. So what we're going to talk about today is something we actually have discussed in rants before, but there's a slightly new twist on it. And so I just wanted to talk about it. On the D&D Beyond forum, somebody made a post, but this doesn't only pertain to Dungeons & Dragons. It could pertain to any role-playing game. In the post, what he asked was, is it okay to rig rolls, for the GM to rig the roll? What he said, rig the dice, or use rigged dice. I don't think he meant using weighted dice. I think he meant rigging the roll in some way. Is it okay for the GM to use rigged dice if the GM wants to do it for the story, for the narrative? Hang on, before I continue that, I do want in the options, under the keybinds, so I want to change The light mode's D-pad left. High beams. Okay, high beams. I want to be D-pad right. I don't know why it did that. Okay, well, all right. And then the horn, I want to assign to H, and this way it's gone. I don't want the horn. I just use the horn when I hit H, and then the windshield wipers. Are going to be up. So hopefully the high beam one is correct. But yeah, I prefer doing it that way. So now we're going to drive. So let's see. Lights are on. And that's turning the high beam on. Okay, we're good. Somebody remind me, not that you guys are watching this live, I need to remember after 7 p.m. you've got to turn your lights on. The game is perpetually in summer, like around late July. So it never snows, sometimes rains, and it gets dark around 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Pretty much regardless of what latitude you're on, I believe. And there's no moon at night, which is frustrating to me, but there's no moon apparently because people were complaining about the way the moon lighting worked, or because it was always full. I don't know why they couldn't create an algorithm to have it just change quarters like every week. I don't know. Right, it would be full, then half, then new, then half, then full, you know. I don't know why they couldn't do that. It didn't need to change the sickles and stuff, but it could have just done that to make it simple. Anyway, so is it okay for the GM to, for whatever reason this person asked, go ahead and, rig the rolls for the purposes of the story? And the overwhelming weight of opinion on the forum was that yes, it is okay and actually preferred for the GM to rig rolls for the purposes of the story. Now, I've talked about this before, and I have said that if we take the story part out, because that's what I want to talk about today, I think it's perfectly okay for the GM to rig rolls. I tend not to do it. In fact, I've been playing Deadlands for, I don't know, about 10 sessions now across one short campaign and a longer campaign. We did, if you know anything about Deadlands, we did Coffin Rock, which is a short adventure. Are you going to turn? Because really it's my turn here. Yeah, that's not good. Thanks to that guy for making me take a nice tight turn. That's pretty realistic. Drivers are often very inconsiderate of tractor trailers. So in my Deadlands game in it's 5 sessions of Coffin Rock. We've done 5 or 6 sessions of Blood Drive, which has been updated for the Weird West, or the current version of Deadlands. And in every one of those sessions, I just roll openly in front of the players. My best friend actually doesn't like it, and I don't. He liked it at first. I think now he would prefer if I rolled blind to them, but I won't, because I kind of quote unquote grew up on watching Savage Worlds with the Wildcard show, and Jordan Caves Calaman, who is the GM, always rolls in the open, and so yeah, that's what I'm used to. And since they have bennies and stuff to help them out, and I can use bennies, if I'm going to roll behind the screen, why would I ever need to use a benny, right? Because I could just say, I want it to be whatever I want, and then the GM doesn't need bennies; they just use whatever they want, right? So I mean, to me, I think the reason you give GMs bennies is so the GM can re-roll when the GM wants. When it's important for the story, I can re-roll it up to 4 times with a group of 4. Okay, so that allows both the players and the GMs with the bennies to sort of have some control over the story. And but my best friend really believes in the GM should be able to, fudge the dice to help the story along. And I think that's not why I would fudge, right? In the past, when I have fudged, it hasn't been for story reasons. It's been for player reasons. That is to say, most of the time what's going to happen is I'm going to take a character out of a fight very, very early in the fight, and it's going to be a long fight, and the player's going to sit there with nothing to do for 2 hours or half an hour or 40, an hour and 45 minutes, whatever. And so I don't want to do that to a player and bore them. And so that's a reason to fudge, or fudging because I really want them to make this perception roll so they can find the clue that I left for them and assume that they would find, but they rolled really badly. I didn't expect them to crit fail, or what have you. Obviously, the real ideal is to create something that won't be on that sort of a hair trigger where they have to make a roll, but sometimes as GMs, we do that, and then we might need to fudge it. And so I guess what I want to hone in on, and we've now discovered Ardmore, which is our second town in Oklahoma. If you discover every town, you get an achievement. I guess where I'm coming from on this is the way this question was asked on the forum was that and what people were saying on the forum was that if you need to fudge for the story, you should go ahead and do it. But here I think is the misconception, right? This assumes that there is some sort of a predetermined, pre-written, objectively correct way for the story to turn out, right? That Luke Skywalker is going to cut off Darth Vader's hand and then turn his father to good. And because we know that that's the way the story should turn out, if the dice don't let us go that way, then we have to ignore the dice, right? And I think the problem here is that the story isn't what the GM wrote in my outline for whatever the outline is for Blood Drive is not the story. It's just a series of prompts for me to give to my players. And the story is what we make of it at the table or over the Zoom in play, right? So I came up with a prompt that was they left this town. It's called Sutter's Flats. It's a town in Blood Drive. And one of the things I rolled randomly was that they were going to find a ghost town. And there were two things, an encounter, and the encounter was with tumbleweeds, which are basically sentient tumbleweeds that can like bite you and drain you of your blood. They're pretty cool, and it was a great encounter. So, okay, tumbleweeds in a ghost town is fine, but what do I do with the ghost town? And I think I went to the Ironsworn table and I rolled action and theme because I had no idea what to do to make it cool. And I can't remember what I came up with on the action and theme tables, but it gave me the idea that the ghost town is actually the town they just left last week. Sutter's Flats reappears ahead of them, looking like it's been deserted for 40 years, and there's a sign outside that says Sutter's Flats population 0. And I had no explanation for it. It's just the Weird West, and it's just this weird thing that happened, right? So all I have in here is you've got that, and the tumbleweeds are in the town. What are they going to make of it? Well, they went in, they explored, they asked questions, they role-played with the other NPCs. They kept the NPCs out of the town because they thought something is wrong, and we're afraid that they're going to get caught up in it, so let's keep them out. We don't want them to get attacked by tumbleweeds, so they told them about the tumbleweeds and about the town, and they said, everybody should stay out. So that was their kind of encounter. Like all I did was set up the encounter, right? And then having set it up, I let them interact with it. And the interaction is the story, not what I wrote in my notes or what was written in the Blood Drive book, although this was a random encounter. It wasn't something that was in the actual book, right? But the town of Sutter's Flats was in the actual book. And so I think I think there are a couple of things going on here that cause players and GMs to have this misconception that somehow there is a story before the session, right? That's not, I don't mean the story of what happened last session, but that when you write an adventure, somehow that's the story and the players are playing through your story. That is not what's supposed to happen in a role-playing game. Role-playing games are cooperative storytelling, and you writing the scenario, or the guys who wrote Blood Drive, they're not cooperating with me or my players. They're just producing story elements, right? Things that are story-like that I can use with my players to create the actual story, which is what we do at the table, right? Cooperative storytelling means you do it together. And so I think this is a misconception a lot of people have, because when you read these, and by the way, Blood Drive unfortunately is guilty of this as well. When you read these pre-written adventures, they read like a story. Blood Drive has chapters, and they tell you what happens in each chapter and how each chapter ends, and each chapter has a climax, at least the way they've written it, right? And so it seems like what your job to do as a GM is to force your players to experience the story you wrote. But that's not cooperative storytelling. And so I'm trying very hard with Blood Drive not to do that, but instead to present them with a scenario, right? A setting, a scene, a mood, and then say to them, what do you do? And the story that emerges, this is the emergent story we've talked about, from that, at the table or at our virtual tabletop, that's the story, not what was written in Blood Drive. What's written in Blood Drive is not the story, guys. I changed it, right? The antagonist in Blood Drive is a Native American former warrior named Tosari. And Tosari has it in for Bill Sutter, who is the guy running the cattle drive. He's the not the trail boss. He's the owner of the herd, and he's a white guy, right? He's Caucasian, and so what they have set up here is guys of these two different races who don't get along for personal reasons, right? Tosari has a personal grudge against Sutter that goes way back. But what ends up happening in the original story is that the player characters get into a lot of fights with Indians, with Native Americans, right? Because Tosari leads them. Now, the guys he's leading are not nice guys, right? And he's gone in for some black magic. And the other Native Americans don't like him because he went in for the black magic. And toward the end of the story, he becomes this thing called a poxwalker, and he's very evil. However, it's all very forced, right? The game, like the book tells you, like, you should make sure he survives, but he's supposed to get wounded so that he comes back as a poxwalker. I'm like, that's really forcing it, right? That's the railroad, right? When you make a story like that and try to get the players to do what the story predicts, that's a railroad. And what they're actually saying in the book is, go ahead and fudge the dice so that Tosari can become a poxwalker by the end of the book. Well, I didn't like that at all, for multiple reasons. My players have expressed some sensitivity regarding, sort of cultural sensitivity, whatever you want to call it, regarding Native Americans and the Old West, and I think that they would probably not be... Do we have to turn here? Yeah, I think we do. Okay, I didn't signal. They would probably not be amenable to the idea of having this character be the villain. And so I changed it. Tosari is gone, and it just so happened as I was reading Blood Drive, I was reading a Louis L'Amour novel where there's a guy who starts out as a good guy and turns into a bad guy, who's a really good gunfighter and cattleman named Tom Sunday. I love that name. I think it sounds like a villain name. And it is a villain name because he starts out good and then he turns... Oops. He starts out good and then he turns bad. And it turns very bad. And so what I decided was Tom Sunday was an enemy of Sutter's, and he supposedly... Sutter actually was part of the posse that went after him and killed him. They hanged him. And now he's alive again. And he's a harrowed, which in Deadlands is basically an undead, right? He's like a revenant almost. And he's back, and he's going after Sutter for revenge. And he's pretty darn evil, and he has undead and stuff working for him. And he's also working for the Biovermilion Rail, which works with undead. And so instead of the enemy being the Native American tribe of Tosari, the enemy is Biovermilion Rail and Tom Sunday. right? So this is something I decided. Tom Sunday isn't going to become a Poxwalker. He's a Harrowed. Now, what Harrowed can do is they can let the demon out because they've got a demon riding along with them called a Manitou. And what I decided is Tom Sunday, if things go badly enough for him, he's going to permanently let the demon out. And the demon's name is Ebros or something, which I got from Fantasy Name Generator. And so I have two versions of Tom Sunday, the weaker version, who's simply a Harrowed, and Ebros Sunday, who is Tom Sunday with the Manitou, the demon, in control. And he's going to be chasing them all across the cattle drive. But I don't know what's going to happen or whether he's going to end up making it to the end or dying early on. I have no plans for what's going to happen to him, except that if they kill him and don't, if they like incapacitate him and don't do the, I don't know, is it cutting the head off or whatever that you have to do to permanently get rid of a Manitou and a Harrowed, he's going to come back because that's what happens with Harrowed, right? You can't, it's hard to perma-kill them because they're already undead. And I don't know if you have to burn them. I can't remember. There's a way to kill Harrowed. Don't quote me on it. I'd have to look it up. I have it written in my notes, but I haven't looked at them in a while because Sunday's vanished for the last few sessions. He's coming back, but I think they probably have forgotten about him. So when he comes back, hopefully in the next session, he's planning to try and come back. But some of this depends on like what they do and whether they do things that that are conducive to him coming back. Right? They could go off the trail. They could do some pretty unpredictable things, and if that happens, then maybe he doesn't come back until even later. We'll see. But so my point here is that there's a story pre-written in Blood Drive, but it's not the story of my campaign. The story of my campaign happens at our table. I'm going to just skip all of this, and we will just confirm. So I'll continue my thoughts, but let's go ahead and watch as we level up. Did we get? Actually, we got to level 2. Excellent. So now you can see the skills. So you can take hazardous cargo. They're worth more. You can do long distance drives. You can take high value cargo, fragile cargo, which is all worth more. Just in time delivery. When you do it just in time, you get extra. And then fuel economy. We don't need that yet because we are not paying for our own fuel yet. So what I'm going to do is start with long distance so we can get slightly longer trips. We also want to check our email because we have 2 messages. And early on in the game, I think it's just telling you that Western Truck is for sale. Western Star Trucks are for sale, and they can give us a loan. The bank, we're not going to take a loan, but the bank can give you loans of up to $100,000. So you can borrow $130,000 or whatever, and then you can use it to buy your own truck. But I never do that. Instead, what I like to do is just simply take quick jobs until I have enough money. So what I try to do is take longer and longer quick jobs until I have enough money to buy my own truck. Now let me just take a look at how long this has been going, 23 minutes. So I think we have some time, and I do want to rant some more. So let's go ahead and we are in Dallas. So let's start in Dallas. And we got some furniture that we can take to Oklahoma City for $5,000. What I want to do is, let's see, price per distance. Yeah, what we want to do is price per mile, sorted highest to lowest. So we're getting the most money that we can here, $25 a mile. So other jobs might actually be worth more. You can see here, like this job is worth more than that, but it's less per mile. So $25 per mile is the most we can get. It's a little bit less here. It's 90 cents fewer, but that's okay. And we're going to be driving this. It looks like a Peterbilt and making $5,000. Let's go ahead and take the job. And we're going back to Oklahoma City, which is actually, I didn't think of that. One of the other considerations is you do get XP, I think, and achievements for unlocking cities and going on new routes. And so I didn't think about this. We're going right back to the town we started in. So that's unfortunate. However, we know it took about 20 minutes to get here, so it should take about 20 minutes to get there, and that should be pretty good. So let's see. We're still using the old We're still using the old company, so I don't know why we're doing that. There's a question mark over there. So what happens is little by little you can discover truck companies. Until you discover them, you aren't able to purchase vehicles from them. You have to discover them. You have to go between 8:30 and 4:30 Monday to Friday. You can discover them anytime, but that's the only time you can shop for them. Once you've discovered 3 of them, I think, it will let you buy trucks online, and then I don't know if you have to obey the shop hours. All right, so we're going to need to make a wide turn to come out of here. And we're now in a Peterbilt truck. So the first truck we used was Western Star in episode 0. This truck we just used was a Freightliner, I think. And now this one is a Peterbilt. Not a huge fan of the Peterbilts, actually, because of the small windows, at least the ones I've used. Okay, so we're heading to the side here, and I'm going to actually go external just to make sure we don't clip anything. Okay, looks good. And off we go. We should have enough gas. They usually give you enough gas to get there. If you do have to buy gas, the shipping company pays for it. When you own your own truck, you pay for it. It's not that expensive relative to the trips. You now can see we started out with $1,500 to our name. We have quadrupled it. We have over 6,000, and when we get this job done, we'll have over 10,000. We'll have increased it by a factor of 10, which is pretty good. There's nobody coming from the left because of those concrete bunkers or blocks, whatever they're called, the dividers. So we're going to go ahead and head out. So you can see on the GPS that it does show you with the arrows if you want to get to the right or the left. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing. It's not as good as a real GPS, but it's not bad. And every once in a while I make a wrong turn, but it's all right. The other, the question marks, by the way, the other thing that they can indicate is a recruitment agency. So if you want to hire new drivers, got new mail, but we will ignore that. Or it can indicate a garage which you can purchase if you want to purchase an additional garage when you have more drivers. You don't really need to do that until you have 4 other drivers, because when you expand your garage, you can have up to 5 drivers in a single fully expanded garage. So let's go on back to story versus die rolls. I think that what you want to do is recognize that the story is what happens at the table, and as a consequence of that, oh boy, we've got some kind of a traffic jam here. As a consequence of that, what are these guys doing? Oh, accident. Okay. As a consequence of the fact that the story is what happens at the table, you have to divorce yourself. Hang on. You have to divorce yourself from the idea. Let me show you this. You do get achievements when you photograph the right things. Somewhere over here. Oops. I think there's something to photograph. Wasn't I? Or was it on the other side? Oh, it's on the other side. There it is. 6 Flags Over Texas. Take a picture. And that gets you a little something, right? You can now see that the camera has turned yellow instead of white. I think there's an achievement if you get them all. Do we need to exit here? No, we do not. Actually, we do. We need to take the second exit. So I think we want to stay in this lane. So if you make your peace with the fact that the story is what happens at the table, then essentially the dice are never wrong. Think about, go back and watch like my Iron Sworn and Starforge playthroughs where we're obeying the dice. Whenever we don't know whether something is supposed to happen or not, we ask the Oracle, is this going to happen? We rate it as likely, unlikely, almost certain, etc. And then we ask the Oracle, when it's time to pay the price, we say, what's the price? And it tells us a valuable item is lost. And then we say, okay, well, what is the item? Is the item my sword? I think it's likely. Ask the Oracle, right? And I built a story based around what the dice were telling me. Okay, and that story was the correct story. If you go back and watch, Wiglaf went through a series of adventures until he got trapped by a dream sphere, and he got into the dream, and he did like a skill challenge, which is like a dramatic task. It's called a scene challenge, and yeah, he failed. And I said at the beginning, well, if he succeeds, he gets out. If he fails, he dies. He failed, he died. That was the end of the campaign. That was the right story because that's what the dice and my creativity together told us was the story. It's not wrong because it's not how I would have written it if I had sat down with a pencil and paper and not rolled dice. Similarly, when I changed Blood Drive to Tom Sunday and he gets killed in the first encounter, right? We're going to have an encounter probably Saturday with him. He could take 7 wounds from a single shot, and I could use Benny's to re-roll soaks 3 times, and he never soaks more than 2 wounds, and it takes him out. Oh well, that's what happened, and that is the right thing to happen for our story because it happened at our tabletop, right? Whatever happens at your tabletop is the right story for your group. And so I think this impetus to fudge dice for the story comes from this misconception that there's some objectively right way for the story to be that the GM wrote beforehand, and now that the dice are telling you something different, you have to change it so that it works out the way the GM wrote it instead of the way the dice rolled it up. Matt Colville talks about this saying, well, the dice can only provide randomness, they can't provide fate or drama, and it is the players and the GM who, through interpreting the rolls of the dice, figure out the drama. And that's true, but it's also the case that there is drama from the interpretation if you interpret it right. Go back again if you want to watch my Ironsworn. I don't know how fun it is to watch, but there was an awful lot of drama in that final scene where Wiglaf died. And in my Starforge game, there was drama in a number of scenes as well, all generated by rolls of the dice and my interpretations and storytelling that came from the rolls of the dice. And so I think it's very important to remember that. And I think the reason players and GMs expect there to be this sort of like correct story that the dice are just helping them tell instead of the story that they tell together. Like, in other words, that there's this objectively correct story that happened that you're just unlocking as you play. It comes partly from the written adventures, which, I mean, literally, if you read Blood Drive, what the players are doing is unlocking the story that the author of Blood Drive wrote. And I've had to do a lot of tweaking to get rid of that aspect of it because I don't want us to be unlocking the story of some guy who's not even in our game group. Our party's story is our story, not his. Okay? But the other place it comes from is computer games, role-playing games, because all computer role-playing games have a pre-written story by the devs, and what you're doing as a player is you're unlocking that story. Even open world seeming games like Skyrim still have sort of short stories. The quests, they're all pre-written. You can't do anything other than do them as written or not do them, right? There's very rarely a way to sort of sidestep the quest and have something that the devs didn't account for occur in a computer game. We can ignore the way station, so we don't have to go in there. So if you play the game Mass Effect, all right, and I'm going to say right now, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about stuff that happens in Mass Effect. In the very first mission, you start out with a Turian named Nihilus, who's a Spectre of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. He's a special agent for the Council, and the humans are not on the Council, and there are no human Spectres. But the captain of your ship wants you to apply for the Spectre program, and you're a candidate. So you're going to go with Nihilus, and he's going to examine you to see if you can handle yourself the way a Spectre can. So no matter what you do, you and Nihilus are going to split up because that's what the story is written for. You can't go with him. And no matter what you do, you go in with two teammates, Caden Alenko and another guy, and Caden survives and the other guy dies. And the reason that guy dies is because you're going to meet a girl named Ashley Williams who's on the base that's been invaded that you're trying to investigate, and she's going to join your party. And she becomes a permanent member of your crew. So now you have Caden and Ashley with you. Meanwhile, Nihilus is going to meet a guy named Saren, and Saren's going to kill him. And you're going to have evidence that Saren killed him, that you and Caden and Ashley will then present to the council to try and get Saren busted, and you will fail to prove that Saren did this. You only have circumstantial evidence and a bit of a recording, and they're not going to say it's enough. And Saren is going to talk his way out of it, no matter whether you're Paragon or Renegade, no matter whether you try to persuade or bully. It doesn't matter what you do. It's going to happen that way. Later on, when you're on the planet of Vermeer, you are going to have to sacrifice either Caden or Ashley because you're going to be on 3 different mission teams. You lead one, and Ashley and Caden are going to have to lead the other 2. You don't have a choice. When the end of that mission comes, you're going to have to leave one of them behind to die. You can't pick yourself to be the one who dies. You must pick one of them. It can't be neither of them. And it can't be Rex or Garrus or any of the other members of your crew. It has to be one of them. This is a pre-written railroad story. No matter whether you're a Paragon or Renegade, all of the story beats are going to happen exactly the same way. When you're on Noveria, you're going to meet Liara Tassoni's mother. You're going to have to fight her. You could possibly at the end offer to spare her, but then I think she kills herself or whatever. She doesn't make it out alive. She dies. And Liara has to then live with that, and you have to deal with the consequences of that with Liara. There are certain options you can optionally choose to fall in love with Liara, or fall in love with Ashley, or fall in love with Caden. I can't remember if there's one or two others. Those are the main love affairs. Tali Zora, who I really, really liked. You cannot romance her in the first game. You can romance her in Mass Effect 2. No matter how nice you are to her, no matter how flirty you are with her, no matter how much of a sweetheart you are to her, you never get the option to romance her, even if you want to. I did. I really liked her. Okay, you cannot romance her because it's not in the pre-written story. And so players of D&D, Savage Worlds, Champions today are so innately familiar with playing through and checking off the boxes of a pre-written story that everyone, players and GMs included, between that and reading pre-written adventures that are written like novels rather than adventures, everybody just sort of intuitively expects there to be this externally written, prepared, pre-designed story that they're just experiencing. And that if the die rolls screw up the story, like, say, killing off Ashley in the second mission so that she's not there for the Sophie's Choice on Vermeer, well, that's quote-unquote wrong. Because she's supposed to be there for that choice when you go to Vermeer. Right? I think we need to be over here. I'm not sure, but I think so. Why is this guy going so slowly? And so, I think that some of this is a misconception that's the company's own fault, including Pinnacle in this, with Blood Drive, and certainly every D&D adventure that I've seen in 5e, and all the Champions adventures, which is why I've always said the Champions adventures are horrible. They're railroads because the writer wrote the story, and then all the story beats have to happen, or you did it wrong. So in the Coriolis effect, which is a Champions adventure, there's a female character who's going to become Coriolis, who's like an atmosphere, like wind character, right? And the way the Coriolis effect is designed, right, you cannot save her from being like turned into a wind elemental. She has to be, and you're going to have to fight her. she's driven mad by it. And it's just written like a story. It was written by Dennis Maloney, who was also the writer of all of the comic books that were put out by Hero Games, so like the Champions comics and stuff. The guy's a writer. He's a very good writer, but he basically came up with a story that I guess he couldn't get published as a comic book. It's what it looks like, and so he turned it into a Champions adventure. Oh, see, I forgot to use my headlights. He turned it into a Champions adventure because he couldn't get it published any other way, but it reads like a comic book instead of like an adventure. And yes, Champions is a comic book simulator, but you shouldn't be playing in an existing story. You should be building the story together as you play. So this is my point, and it goes along with, if you look at my rants about the emergent story and everything, same basic idea, right? The story should be what you guys generate at the table, and if that's true, then the dice can't ever get it wrong. Now, at least story-wise. Now, of course, it's possible for the dice to get it wrong in the sense that what happens might be anticlimactic, right? It would be super anticlimactic to have the big bad evil guy die in a single shot. And it would be a lot more fun if he lived, so you maybe tweak the die rolls or the saving throws so that he can last an extra round or two and make the battle exciting. Okay, that's different. But that's not trying to make excuse me, a certain outcome happen in the story. It's just trying to make the adventure exciting, right? And so I highly recommend that people stop trying to make a predetermined story happen and instead go with the dice and the role play at the table to be your story. So let's leave that rant there. We've just gained some more experience. Did we level up? Oh, just missed it. Just missed it. I bet I would have had it if I'd done the hard parking. But that's usually really frustrating, and I was trying to end this episode without frustrations. We went 188 miles over 3 game hours and a half and used 40 gallons of fuel. So we're still level 1, and we are all set with this particular episode, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Please leave comments below, both about the story and the roleplay, and about whether you enjoyed watching me do this playing American Truck Simulator. If you don't like this game and you don't want to watch me play any more of it, again, I don't care about likes and dislikes, but it's a lot more helpful to me if you're going to put a dislike if you actually leave a comment and explain why. Don't fear that I'll get mad that you gave me a dislike and you're trying to be anonymous. You don't need to do that. You don't really even need to leave likes and dislikes. What you can do is just put a comment down below and tell me, hey, I don't really like this game. Can you pick a different game? I might try another one. The problem with this is it needs to be a game that is enough on autopilot for me like this, where I can only use like half my brain to play the game so that I can use the other half of my brain to do the rant. And as you saw, even so, sometimes I mess up the game a little bit. Like with the truck, I almost crashed. And almost didn't take the right exit. And also sometimes I mess up the rant because I get distracted. So kind of, it's not perfect the way it would be with City of Heroes, where I can play completely on autopilot. But we've had enough City of Heroes, guys. Surely we have. There are hundreds and hundreds of episodes of that on my channel. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. And maybe I've inspired you to check out this game. It's a pretty cool game. And the base game isn't that expensive. So I think there are even times on Steam where you can get the base game practically for free. So you may watch your Steam sales and see. They put out a lot of DLC. You don't need all the DLC. You can just play the original 2 states, I think, are Nevada and California. And it's plenty of driving to see if you like it. And you get lots of truck models and everything. And then if you want all the DLC later, you can get it. They often go on sale. Especially when they put a new state out, they'll often package it with some of the older states, and you get a nice deal. I've got them all, and I really enjoy them. I'm going to check out the mods and see what the heck happened, because I feel like the mod should be active, but it's not, and I'm not seeing the real-world advertising and real-world companies the way I thought I was going to. So I'll check that out and let you guys know what happens in the next episode. Until next time, I am Scrapper Lock, and this has been Let's Rant with Scrapper using American Truck Simulator.